2007.
Okay.
That's when I became superintendent. I had to go back and look and see when Gene left. So his last date was June 30th of 2007. So I came in July of 2007.
Boy, it's wild that it was that late for a African American to get that position.
Well, there's still a lot of
2007.
firsts happening, Ryan.
That's wild.
Believe me, if you think about it, if you think about it, how many black mayors have you had in Champaign-Urbana?
I don't know.
The answer is 0.
Really? On both sides?
Both sides.
Wow.
You're in East Central Illinois. I mean, believe me, my wife and I made a conscious decision to stay here. Okay, we could have gone all kind of places, but after we had kids, it's like, okay, my mom and dad at that time were in Kankakee, Illinois. Her mom was in Southern Illinois. So, hour and a half to 3 hours, 3.5 hours, we're right in the middle. Good community, university here. We want to continue our education, we can do that. We were in 2 different systems. And so we made a conscientious decision. Hey, we're going to stay here. We like the community. And just like anything else, there are some things that could be better. And we attempted to make them better for everybody as best we could. But but it's still a lot of things.
What was it that made you choose to stay? Because that sounds like it was a very purposeful choice.
We liked the opportunities, and we liked the fact that there was, there was diversity, not only black, white, so to speak, but Asian, Latina, Middle Eastern, because of the university. And then you had like culture with the university, you had entertainment, a lot of big city kind of things in a small community. And then you had easy access to Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, so from our perspective, and, cost wasn't crazy. Crime wasn't, out of pocket, so to speak. So it was a good Midwestern community, with similar values that we grew up with.
You were the first superintendent from an African American. Let me re-ask that question.
No, go ahead.
You were the first African American superintendent in Urbana, in the school system in Urbana.
Right.
That was in 2007 that you got that position. What was that like for you personally?
Personally, Ryan, as I look back on that, I remember kind of overwhelming responsibility and accountability, not only to the community, but especially the black community. Because anytime you're the first at anything, at least my generation, we feel that we've got to go above and beyond. You just can't do the job. You have to try to do the job not only the best you can, but exceptionally if you can. Now, whether or not I made that mark or not, or hit that mark, I'm not sure, but the responsibility was there, and that's what I look back on.
What were the challenges that you faced when you started?
Many of the same challenges that superintendents have today. If you have challenges within society as a whole, whether it's poverty, violence, homelessness, in the schools, especially the public schools, that's magnified. So as a public school administrator, you have to find answers or solutions to those challenges the best way you can. Many times with limited resources, but you still have to make the attempt to do that. So I think those were really the challenges that I've faced. And unfortunately, some of those things are still in existence today.
One of the things that people celebrate about your legacy as superintendent was that you provided a lot of opportunities that didn't previously exist for the African American community.
I think for me, the black community, the black culture is important not only to black children, but to all children, as far as understanding that we all make up this thing called the United States of America. And the importance is that each and every child have that opportunity to at least get an understanding and possibly to celebrate each other, whether that's Latina, whether that's black, whether that's white, whether that's Asian, what makes us us. And so from my perspective, having grew up in black culture, I celebrated. And I felt that what we tried to do was do the same thing. And we also wanted to make sure that we brought in African American or black teachers, administrators, teacher assistants, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, to make sure that they understood that America is a mosaic. And we have to make sure that we're doing what's right as far as that's concerned, showing our kids that that's what America is about.
What is it that you look back on and feel like let me put it this way.
Sure.
What was your most rewarding experience as superintendent?
Wow, that's a great question. I think my most rewarding experience was watching students, children, cross that stage at State Farm Center now, Assembly Hall then. And many of those children were told that they wouldn't be able to do that by whomever. I'm not calling out names or anything like that, but watching the sense of accomplishment on their face as well as their parents' faces, and then watching them go into this thing called society and be very successful in whatever area they may have deemed that they wanted to do, whether that was going on to a college or a university, whether that was starting a business, whether it was going to a trade school, and seeing what they were able to accomplish when at one point they never thought they could. I mean, that's my greatest sense of accomplishment, that I played a small part in that.
When you say that they didn't think that they could, what is it that shifted their perspective?
People caring about them, telling them that they could do it, giving them that little pat on the back and saying, hey, look, you can do anything you set your mind to, but understand that you're going to have to give up something in order to do that. Now, it's just not going to happen because you want it. You have to work towards something, and there are consequences if you don't, or even if you do, there are consequences associated with it. But really supporting them, encouraging them, setting expectations, and making sure that they had an opportunity to reach goals that they themselves didn't know were attainable.
Since you've retired, we still face certain challenges in education. And while you've opened a lot of doors and created a lot of opportunity, the folks that have followed in your footsteps are doing the best that they can to continue the fight. What are some of the challenges that we face today when it comes to opportunities? It sounds like encouragement for students, ultimately creating roads to success in the education system.
I think some of the challenges that still exist are a number of the ones that I alluded to a little bit earlier. We still have poverty within our community, and that's magnified within our public school system. And I think that's important to understand and quantify as an educator. we still have a lot of violence in the community itself. And that is also magnified within our school system, unfortunately. There are still elements of racism that exist, elitism that exists. And we have to acknowledge that, but give our kids the tools to overcome that, to be able to fight the good fight, so to speak, to understand that even though those are barriers, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't overcome those barriers. And be there and be supportive, set high expectations, and give them the tools necessary in order for them to be successful in whatever way success is measured.
I caught what you were saying earlier, which is it seems like a lot of students really shift and change when they are seen, when somebody comes beside them and shows them what they can do because they didn't realize that there was other opportunities in front of them. Do you have any anecdotes or experiences that you can share just working with students?
Well, I had a young man that played on one of my baseball teams that I coached. And I coached just about everything from bowling to basketball, football, baseball. But this young man played on my baseball team. Nice young man, quiet. But most people didn't think that he was motivated to do anything. Some of the other teachers and coaches, they just didn't think he was motivated. This young man owns his own business right now, a very successful business. I'm not going to put it out there, but he'll know what I'm talking about. And this is a kid that no one had, I shouldn't say no one, very few individuals had high expectations for what this young man could accomplish, but he did accomplish it. And so when I look back on that, I said, well, how many other young people out there who, if they had just had the encouragement and the support, what could they have accomplished? And on the other hand, right, and also there are enough stories out there to show how with that encouragement, with that setting of high expectations, they did accomplish a great deal. Unfortunately, as people, we tend to look at the negativity of things. You know, we focus on the negative, and right now in our society, I mean, it's like either, you know, it's either this or it's that. There's no gray area.
Right,
And
we're
which
in a
is
very binary society these days where a lot of emotion drives a lot of our thinking.
and very vicious.
Yeah.
I mean, very vicious. And I think we have to realize that young minds are very impressionable. They're seeing all of this. They're seeing it on television, they're reading it in the newspapers, they're seeing it in their homes, and we've got to make sure that we balance that out.
Would you say that some of the lack of motivation, some of the pathways to problems are caused maybe not just by the negative things they see in the media, but people's expectations on them? So if somebody has low expectations on an individual, is that individual just going to step up to what people are projecting on them?
Well, I had a coach that was up at Central Michigan, and I won't pull out my phone, but it's a quote, and I'll just kind of, from memory, what it basically said. And he told his team this. He says, if you have low expectations, they'll probably meet it. And what I took from that is, unless we have high expectations for individuals, and in this particular instance we're talking about children, students, unless we have high expectations and we give them the support and show them what they need to know in order to get there, draw a map, You know, you don't force them, but you give them the support necessary. They can reach it, but if we set low expectations, they're going to reach that too,
what they're
probably
gonna
a heck
go
of a
for.
lot easier.
It reminds me of records when it comes to athletics. And a lot of times you'll see an untouchable record in different sports. And then one day somebody will beat it. And then soon after, many people will beat that previously established record. And it's almost like because they saw that it was possible, they stepped up their capacity. So much of this is mental. So much of this is what you're told you can or can't do.
It's kind of like the 3-minute mile, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Or actually breaking the record for the 4-minute mile and that kind of thing with Banneker and those guys. But it's the same kind of thing. I mean, you see what's possible. And I guess for me, the whole point was, it was simple. I wanted to show everyone, not only the black community, but everyone, what was possible. That a black man, in my instance, could in fact be the superintendent and do a decent job, you know. And that was something that at the time for a lot of kids in Urbana, or I think when Arthur Culver became the superintendent in Champaign, they didn't think it was possible. But then it happened. So what happens next as far as how many individuals decided to go into education and where they're at and how they're progressing through the bureaucracy of education? How many did we inspire? I don't know, but I got a feeling there might have been a few of them.
Well, I think we're seeing it in reality as well with, you have Dr. Boozer and Dr. Ivory Tatum in Champaign and Urbana, and you know, both coming from a minority background, standing at the top of running these school administrations.
Yes,
and
sir.
so it's fantastic to see the diversity that has followed. And you know, you started that position in 2007. That wasn't that long ago, and now we're seeing more diversity in the system. And it seems like you broke that 4-minute mile, that record,
Right.
and now more
right.
people are following in your footsteps. Tell me a little bit about your journey to become superintendent. Is that what you set out to do? Was that a goal that you put in front of yourself? Where was your mind when you first started in the education system?
Wow, Ryan, you're going to want me to go back. I'll have to go back to probably, my undergrad was Indiana State University. I was a baseball player. And at the time, my goal was to become a professional baseball player. And at the time, we weren't making a whole lot of money at that, as far as baseball players. So I was going to be a baseball player, and then in the winter, I was going to teach. Now, you think about it now, you go, what? But that was my mindset. So I was drafted. I didn't sign my first year. I went back to school, the initial draft with the Chicago White Sox. I went back to school. I graduated from Indiana State University, and I signed with the Atlanta Braves. And unfortunately, or fortunately, Atlanta, after 1 year, decided, maybe you're not as good a baseball player as we thought you were, but I still had teaching. So I started teaching, and I coached. I went back to the same high school that I graduated from 5 years prior. And now I was Mr. Williams, but to a lot of the kids who were 8th graders, you know, they knew me as Preston or my nickname. So anyway, we started there. I coached baseball. I left there, got an opportunity to come here to Champaign with Mr. Stratton, who was the personnel director at the time, Kenny Stratton. He hired me. I came here. I taught at Centennial High School. I coached baseball. I coached softball. I decided to go to law school. So I left, went to law school, Didn't like it as much as I thought I would. Came back, Mr. Stratton was able to get another position for me. I came back and worked at Centennial and did that for a few years, worked with a lot of great people. Had an opportunity to come to Urbana as a head baseball and basketball coach and teaching social sciences, and I did that. And from there, I was at Urbana Middle School as an administrator, and then into district office. Dr. Gene Amberg hired me as a human resources person, and then I was a curriculum instruction. So I went from director of HR to assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction, deputy superintendent of curriculum instruction, deputy superintendent, as I said, and then superintendent.
So you truly came up through the system.
I went all the way through
All
the
the way.
system.
You've been at every level of the system. What do you remember the point though? Because I mean, we talk about overcoming what people think they can do, right?
Sure.
Do you remember that moment where you thought, I could be the superintendent and I'm going to go for it?
I think that moment happened for me, Ryan, during a negotiation with the Urbana Educational Association, and they had asked me, the superintendent, to be a part of the district team. And so therefore, as a part of the district team, you're rubbing elbows with the superintendent and all the other district administrators. And at that point, I really thought that, okay, I could do this. And he gave me the opportunity not too long after that.
What was the hardest part for you, the greatest challenge for you personally, becoming superintendent?
Probably the greatest challenge is understanding that your time is not your own from that perspective. Anytime children are mentally or physically injured, that's difficult. A lot of sleepless nights.
You carried a lot of
months.
responsibility.
365 days a year, 366 with leap year. It's a 24/7 job. You're never, I mean, there is no vacation, because phone rings, email, text messages, you have to be on duty at all times. And so there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that you have as a superintendent. No matter what happens in the district, you know, the buck stops here, so to speak, if you remember President Truman.
Yeah.
So that's the thing you have to understand. There's no downtime as a superintendent.
What was it that you feel like was your greatest contribution to the system as superintendent?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to have to take a sip of coffee as I contemplate that one, Ryan.
I'll join you.
Thanks. I think my greatest contribution, that I look back on it, is the fact that I showed that I cared, because I genuinely did. I also was always present. I was never above anyone from the standpoint of thinking that I was a elitist or something to that nature. You always have the things like you hired a lot of people, you help facilitate building facilities. We, which is the key term, we were able to get in the 1% sales tax to help the county build all types of buildings and refurbishing facilities throughout the county. The collaborative approach to working in a school district by building a strong team, and a number of those individuals went on to successes in other districts and even within Urbana itself. I would hope that I had a legacy of excellence, but just like anything else, that's debatable. But individuals who know me know I'm going to do the best job I can do, and I'm me because, you know, everybody else is taken.
The best thing any of us can do is to be the best version of ourselves.
Yes, sir.
What is it that you hope for students moving forward in today's day and age? I know we talked about some of the issues, but what is it about today? I mean, we are facing a new world with technology, with issues that have been here since the beginning of time, but we're facing them differently. But at the same time, new opportunities are opening up. What do you hope things will look like in 10 years and 100 years?
Okay. Well, that's a 2 or 3 part question,
Right.
So I'll do my best to address it. First of all, what would I hope for kids now? I've got 4 granddaughters, and what I hope for them is what I hope for all children, all students, is that they find success in whatever they deem success to be. That they have peace of mind, because I think anxieties, mental illness, all of those things affect everyone. So I hope they have peace of mind. I hope they can find individuals who will support and nurture them in a very positive way. Those are the things that I hope for. As far as what the future, I think I want to make sure I answer your question.
Yeah,
So
just in the future, you know, you and your career in your life with your students, you overcame a lot of challenges that you were facing during the time that you were there. Challenges continue. What would you hope things look like down the road?
Okay. Well, kind of a little story. When I was in high school, I had a counselor tell me that college probably isn't for me, that I should do some other things, maybe maintenance engineer or something like that. So at least I had parents at that time. I had individuals, my mom and dad, who said, well, look, you can do anything you put your mind to. We're going to make sure you have an opportunity to go to college if that's what you want to do, if that's what you want to do. And so I was able to do that, and I came back and I showed this individual my degrees and my dean's list and all of that kind of thing. And of course, you know, they said, well, you know, I know you could do it. I'm like, yeah, okay. So what do I hope? I hope that the future individuals will not give up on themselves. Understanding that you're going to have a lot of people in your life to tell you what you can't do, you know, what is difficult. Just because it's difficult doesn't mean you can't do it. Just because they couldn't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. I wish them the ability to have a strong disposition, a strong work ethic, understanding that you have to believe in yourself and work towards something. That's what I hope for.
It's the best soundbite of the entire interview. That's powerful. It reminds me of the conversation I had with Chandra about her father, Willie Summerall.
Oh, yeah.
Because she said that he would work with children who didn't believe they could sing.
All the time.
And he would say, I think you can. And he would show them how. And it instilled this confidence in them. It's the exact same thing that you're talking about, where so much of our potential is based on our, I don't want to say confidence alone, but our beliefs. What we believe to be true about ourselves, but also what we believe to be true about the world around us.
Yes, sir.
And having people in our lives who are there to say, let me show you more In fact, let me tell you, I believe you can. I heard somebody say, I forget the quote, but I read somewhere there was somebody was saying that behind every successful person was an individual that believed in them.
Yes.
Somebody who showed, or individuals, right? Somebody who showed them that you can be more than what you think you are. Or this crazy dream you have, that's actually possible.
Right, and I guess for me, the thing that has been so true is that I'm going to say a little thing that my great-grandfather would always say, you know, with all of us little youngins, as he would call them. You don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know, you don't know. That's when you got a problem. We take for granted that we think these kids know everything. They don't. We're looking at them through our eyes, which in my case, I'm 66 years old. They're 11. They haven't seen the things that I've seen. They don't have the background knowledge. They don't have the experiences, right? I do. So you have to be a guide, right? Showing them what's out there, what's available. They don't know. They don't know the possibilities because they've never been exposed to it. I think our last conversation, we talked a little bit about the fact that poverty does not mean that you have a lack of intelligence. It typically means you have a lack of opportunities or exposure. Doesn't mean you're not intelligent. And so when I always taught, it was from the perspective, I didn't care who the kids were, it didn't matter. You have to probe and understand where they're coming from. And then you've got to fill in the void, whatever that might be. And everybody's different. You know, and that to me is kind of, when you look at kids, you never know what their potential is. But sometimes in order for them to reach their potential, you got to give them the support, the encouragement, the high expectations, the push in order to meet those expectations, to meet that potential. And I've always felt, you know, yeah, parents do that, hopefully.
Yep.
But what happens when a kid doesn't have those type of parents? Someone's got to fill in that void.
Well, there will be voices in their life, positive or negative.
Yes, always. And Mr. Somerville is a great person. I've known Mr. Somerville. I knew Mr. Somerville for a long time, and Mrs. Somerville, who was a great counselor. And funny story about Mr. Somerville, when he was in college, he was like a band director. I mean, he was an excellent band director, but he had to pivot, right? And he did. And the things that he was able to do and the people that he was able to help and show the world and show possibilities, it's endless, man. I mean, things he was able to do. He helped a lot of people.
There's a theme in the process of doing these interviews and these stories for Black History Month. A common thread that I've picked up on is what is just the surface, what somebody did with their life, what their legacy is, what their resume looks like. It's just the surface. The reason they are remembered, the impact that they actually have, comes from this very personal connection that they had in the community. Because they weren't just sitting in an office doing things. They were actually touching lives on an individual level. And the repercussions of that, it's the same as like when you walk up to a peaceful lake and you throw a stone in. the ripples are going to go across the entire body of water. And that's what's been, not, I don't want to say it's been surprising, it's been encouraging to me, it's been fascinating, but it's also been powerful in how I've noticed just a single individual can make a wild difference in their community just by paying attention to the people around them.
Very true. Ryan, I think back on my own life. Of course, my parents were very supportive, but my mom never graduated from high school. My dad never graduated from junior high or middle school, okay? But they instilled in us a love for education. And I also look back on individuals teachers, who pushed and challenged me personally to do things, to do positive things. And so for me, it's a responsibility. You know, I have a responsibility to the Black community. As a Black man, I have a responsibility to the Black community. Does that mean that I don't have a responsibility to the entire community? Of course not. Of course not. But I have a unique responsibility to the Black community because of who I am and what I do. See, because as the first, you're always looked upon as being a representative of your community.
Where you come from, who
Yes,
you
sir.
represent.
Yes. And that's the whole point. You always, as I told you a bit earlier, the point is, yeah, I might be the first, I don't want to be the last.
Right.
And so I have a unique responsibility as a Black man to make sure that I do everything possible to be successful, everything possible to be successful in the position that I have. Because if not, then individuals out there will say, see, I told you. And that's a unique burden, but that's fine. I never had a problem with that because I wanted that responsibility.
Well, it's a burden, but it's an opportunity.
Very much so.
It
Very
probably
much
depends
so.
on how you look at it. If you see it as a burden, I imagine it could become too heavy to carry.
Could
But if
be.
you see it as an opportunity, it becomes something that you get to chase after.
That's right. That's right. So important. So important. So.
Well, Dr. Williams,
Oh.
it's been wonderful to have this conversation. I just want to say thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to just hear how you think, learn more about where you came from, the things that you've done, and I'm grateful to have been able to just understand a bit more about the fabric of Urbana in the school system. And you've opened a lot of doors for a lot of people, and the world is a better place because of you, and it is an honor to talk to you today.
No, thank you. You make me very humbled by you allowing me to come here and share some of my story with you. And hopefully it wasn't too boring, huh?
Not at all. We could go on for another hour. Thank you.